So today we are going to talk about the three branches of government which would be presented to you by Lance Mira and Ilian De Vera. The Philippines is a republic, and being in a republic we have a presidential form of government, which power is divided into three branches: the legislative branch, executive branch, and judicial branch. In a presidential form of government, power is divided into three: legislation for the legislative branch, execution for the executive branch, and settlement of legal controversies for the judiciary. Under the legislative branch, we have Congress, which Congress is divided into two: the Senate and the House of Representatives. Under executive branch, we have the President, Vice President, and the Cabinet members. And lastly, under judicial branch, we have the Supreme Court and other courts. For the executive branch, they are responsible in carrying out and enforcing laws. The executive branch comprises the President, Vice President, Cabinet members, executive departments, other boards, commissions, and committees. So these are the members of the President's Cabinet, followed by the Vice President, Leni Robredo, and the President, Rodrigo Duterte. The current Philippine President is Rodrigo Duterte, which he was elected in 2016. He is the head of state and head of government. A president is eligible to be in a position only for 6 years, won by the popular vote, and has no re-elections. The functions of the president are Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, control all executive departments, implement policy, prepare executive budget to be submitted to Congress, appoint and remove executive officials. Second is the Vice President. The current Vice President is Leni Robredo, which also won in 2016. She is the second highest executive official of the Philippines. Similar to the President, she is eligible to be in a position for 6 years, won by the popular vote, and has no re-elections. Some of the duties include assuming presidency in case of death, disability, or resignation of the President. And lastly, the Cabinet. The Cabinet members serve as advisors to the President. Cabinet members include the Vice President and other heads of executive departments. All Cabinet members were chosen by the President and confirmed by the Commission of Appointments. Similar to the President and Vice President, the Cabinet members have a 6-year term unless it is dismissed by the President. So these are the qualifications for a President. A President must be a natural-born Filipino, a registered voter, must be able to read and write, at least 40 years of age at the day of election, and must have resided in the Philippines for at least 10 years before the election is held. So these are the powers of the President. Under ordinance power, we first have the executive orders. So the executive orders is the provision of general or permanent character in execution of constitutional powers. Second, administrative orders. These are acts of the President related on the aspects of governmental operations in carrying out duties as the administrative head. Third is proclamations. These are acts of the President fixing dates of public moments or interest, upon the existence of which the operation of a specific law or regulation is made to depend. Fourth is memorandum of orders. These are acts of the President on administrative detail or temporary interest which concerns a particular officer or office. Fifth is general or special orders. These are acts and commands of the President in his capacity as the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Philippines. And for another topic, we have power over aliens. This power given to the President has certain powers over non-Filipinos, such as deportation of aliens from the country after due process. And also, a President can change the status of a foreigner to a permanent resident status, and other more. The power of eminent domain is when the President determines when it is necessary to exercise power in behalf of the national government. Power of escheat is the reversion of proceedings over all lands assigned to a person, to be disqualified under the Constitution to acquire land. Power to reserve lands is the power of the president to reserve land for public use and for other specific purposes. Ill-gotten wealth. It is the power to have proceedings to recover properties unlawfully acquired by officials. And lastly, power of appointment. The president may appoint officials, which is then approved by the Committee of Appointments. So these are the 22 executive departments of the Philippines, which executive heads are individually. In the local government level, each local government has its own chief executive. In the barangay, which has the barangay chairman. In the municipality, has a municipal mayor. The city has a city mayor. And the province has a provincial governor. So here we have the punong barangay. The punong barangay as the chief executive of the barangay government. They are to exercise and perform the following powers and functions such as to enforce laws and ordinances which are applicable within the barangay, maintain public order in the barangay, prepare the annual executive and supplemental budget of the barangay, supervise over the activities of the Sangguniang Kabataan, deliver basic social services and access to facilities, and to promote the general welfare of the barangay. Next is the municipal and city mayors. The municipal and city mayors as chief executive of the municipal and city government, they shall exercise and perform the following powers and functions such as exercise general supervision and control over all programs, projects, services, and activities of the municipal or city government, direct the formulation of the municipal or city development plan, initiate and propose legislative measures to the Sangguniang Bayan or Panlungsod, enforce all laws and ordinances, and implement all approved policies, programs, projects, services, and activities of the municipality or city, initiate and maximize the generation of resources and revenues to be used for the implementation of the development plans, program objectives, and priorities, ensure and delivery of basic services and the provision of adequate facilities as provided for under Section 17 of the Local Government Code. And third is the provincial governors. The provincial governor, as the chief executive of the provincial government, shall exercise and perform the following powers and duties such as exercise general supervision and control over all programs, projects, services, and activities of the provincial government, enforce all laws and ordinances, and implement all approved policies, programs, projects, services, and activities of the province, initiate and maximize the generation of resources and revenues to be used for the implementation of development plans, program objectives, and priorities, ensure the delivery of basic services and the provision of adequate facilities as provided for under Section 17 of the Local Government Code. So here we have the legislative branch. The legislative branch is authorized to make new laws, to alter existing laws, and to repeal or to revoke laws. All of these are through the power vested in the Philippine Congress. Though they function as Congress, this branch is divided into two, which is the Senate as the upper house and the House of Representatives as the lower house. So the two pictures that you could see are the Senate plenary and the House of Representatives headquarters, the Batasang Pambansa. So here we have the Senate. The Senate is composed of 24 senators, which 12 of them would be elected every 3 years. The current Senate President is Tito Soto, which he was Senate President since 2018. So each senator has a length term of 3 years with a maximum of 2 consecutive terms. So what are the functions of senators? So we have here lawmaking. Senators are lawmakers. They study bills carefully and work their way to get it signed into law. Second, budget. Senators help determine on how and on how much the government spends public money based on the national budget. Third, impeachment of judges. They decide whether an accused official can be removed from office. Fourth, in case of war. With the rest of Congress, senators have the power to declare the existence of a state of war. Fifth, oversight also means reviewing how particular laws are implemented by relevant government agencies. Sixth, appointments. They examine certain appointments made by the president as part of the system of checks and balances. Sixth, treaty concurrence. They evaluate treaties entered into by the Philippine government. The agreements only take effect only if 16 out of 24 senators approved. And lastly, martial law. With the rest of Congress, they may revoke or extend martial law or suspend the privilege on the writ of habeas corpus. In this picture, we have the current senators of the Philippines, and not included in the photo are Senators Laila de Lima and Manny Pacquiao. So here we have the House of Representatives. The House of Representatives is the lower house of the Congress. The term Congress includes the Senate and the House of Representatives, but usually the term Congress is more often used as reference to the House of Representatives. There are 304 representatives, which 243 comes from congressional districts, while 61 comes from party list representatives. So the length of representatives is 3 years, and they have a maximum of 3 consecutive terms. So the picture here is the Batasang Pambansa complex. So these are the classifications of legislative power. Here we have original legislative power, which is possessed by the people in their sovereign capacity. Second, delegated legislative power is possessed by Congress and other legislative bodies by virtue of the Constitution. Third, constituent legislative power is the power to amend or revise the Constitution. And lastly, ordinary legislative power is the power to pass ordinary laws. So here we have the Commission on Appointments. It is an independent body, separate and distinct from legislature, although membership is confined to Congress. It does not deprive the President authority to appoint, rather it serves as a check against abuse, and it assures the President exercises power wisely by appointing fit and qualified persons. So before creating a bill, senators and representatives engage with each other to come up with ideas for new laws. If they have decided the solutions to the problems can be addressed by passing a law, then they carefully study the ideas, then write them into bills. When a bill is finalized, the bill is filed in the office of the Secretary and calendared for its first reading. The lawmakers convene for a plenary session at the session hall, which during the first reading, the Secretary of the House of Representatives or the Senate reads the number and title of the bill. Then, the officer president of the Senate or the Speaker of the House of Representatives refers the bill to the appropriate committee. After the referral of the bill, the committee will determine whether there is a need to conduct a public hearing or not. If yes, the committee schedules the hearing, sends public notices, and invites relevant persons from the government or from private sectors. If no, then they will just schedule the bill for committee discussions. The second reading is one of the most challenging stages in passing a bill. During the second reading, the Secretary of the Senate or the Secretary General of the House of Representatives reads the number, title, and the text of the bill. Upon the motion of the majority floor leader, the floor will be opened, then followed by the interpellation or debate, wherein the sponsor defends the proposed bill before their colleagues in session. Once the period of sponsorship and debate is closed, the period of amendments is open. Lawmakers can propose specific wordings, stylistics, and intents that they want to be included in the final version of the bill. On the third reading, printed copies of the bill are then reproduced for third reading, and copies are distributed to all members 3 days before the reading. On the third reading, the Secretary only reads the number and title of the bill. Upon the motion of the majority leader, nominal voting is called. They are to vote yes or no orally, and are given time to explain their vote. Amendments are not allowed during third reading. If the bill gets majority of votes, then it's considered approved. If it's disapproved, it is transmitted to the archives of the Senate or the House of Representatives. When a bill is approved, it is then signed by the Speaker of the House of Representatives and the President of the Senate, and certified by the Secretary General of the House of Representatives and the Secretary of the Senate, and transmitted to the office of the President. The President has three options on what to do with the bill. When the bill is approved, it is assigned with a Republic Act number and becomes a law. If it is vetoed, then a bill is refused to be signed by the President. It is sent back to the House of Representatives, including the reason for the veto. If both Congress decide that the bill or any of its vetoed provisions should still become a law, they will separately hold a vote. Then if two-thirds of members of both houses support the bill, then it becomes a law. And lastly, we have lapsed into law. So the President may do nothing with the bill. The bill will automatically become a law after 30 days while Congress is in session. Congressional immunities. They have the privilege from arrest. They are not punishable for more than 6 years imprisonment. They have the privilege from arrest while Congress is in session, and no member shall be questioned nor held liable in any other place for any speech or debate in Congress or in any committee. One of their legislative privilege is salary. Their salary are governed by Section 10, where salaries of senators and members of the House of Representatives shall be determined by law. No increase in compensation shall take place until the expiration of full term of all members in Congress. So what is the purpose of privilege to free speech? So they could not be prosecuted for any words spoken during debate or voting. The purpose of giving protection over the members against prosecution is to enable them to execute functions of their office as representatives without the fear of prosecution.
Judicial branch. The Philippine judiciary is a hierarchical organization consisting of four levels, with the Supreme Court at the top tier exercising administrative supervision over all courts and court personnel, and wielding jurisdiction to review, revise, reverse, modify, or affirm on appeal or certiorari. Judicial due process. Laws and legal proceedings must be fair. Government must respect all legal rights of a person instead of just some or most of those legal rights when the government deprives a person of life, liberty, and property. Two types of due process. Substantive substantive due process based on the important validity of the law, and procedural due process based on and it's based on the principle that provides judgment only after trial and based on the evidence presented. Grave abuse of discretion is the inconsistent exercise of judgment. It is equivalent to lack of jurisdiction. It is when power is exercised in an authoritarian or dictatorial manner by reasons of personal hostility or unkindness. Lower collegiate courts. Lower collegiate courts for all judicial proceedings regardless of the judicial instance or the nature of the case. Regular courts. It refers to civil courts as opposed to military courts. Military courts cannot try and exercise jurisdiction over civilians for offenses allegedly committed by them, as long as civil courts are open and functioning. Muslim courts, otherwise known as Sharia or Islamic law, is partially implemented in the legal system of the Philippines and is applicable only to Muslims. Sharia courts in the country are under supervision of the Supreme Court of the Philippines. The Supreme Court, Filip Filipino, it's called Kataas-Taasang Hukuman, colloquially referred to as Korte Suprema, is the highest court in the Philippines. Qualifications for Supreme Court justices. According to the Constitution, for a person to be appointed to the Supreme Court, he or she must be a natural born citizen of the Philippines, at least 40 years of age, has been has been for 15 years or more a judge of a lower court or engaged in the practice of law in the Philippines. An additional constitutional requirement, though less precise in nature, is that a judge must be a person of proven competence, integrity, probity, and independence. Original jurisdiction: the power of the court to take judicial cognizance of a case instituted for judicial action for the first time under conditions provided by law. Judicial review: as early as 1936, the Philippine Supreme Court had unequiv- un- unequivocally asserted its constitutional authority to engage in judicial review. The Judicial and Bar Council (JBC), Filipino is Sangguniang Paghukuman at Pang-abogasya of the Philippines, is a constitutionally created body that appoints for vacancies that may arise in the composition of the Supreme Court, other lower courts, and the Legal Education Board, and in the offices of the Ombudsman, Deputy Ombudsman, and the Special Prosecutor. Cold neutrality: the ideal virtue that is desired of a court, whether it is single judge court or a collegial body, is the cold neutrality of an impartial judge. This, of course, is a consummation devoutly wished but not always attained. The justices are expected to be neutral observers more or less. Checks and balances: a system that allows each branch of a government to amend or veto acts of another branch so as to prevent any one branch from exerting too much power.